What if I told you that Hollywood's most innocent faces hid the darkest secrets? Behind those angelic smiles and perfect curls lay stories of addiction, betrayal, and heartbreak that would make grown adults weep. Today, we're uncovering the tragic fates of 20 Golden Age child stars who paid the ultimate price for fame. Judy Garland. The ruby slippers couldn't save Dorothy from her real-life nightmare. Born Frances Ethel Gum in 1922, Judy Garland became MGM's Golden Goose at just 13 years old. But the studio treated her more like a money-making machine than a human being. They pumped her full of amphetamines to keep her skinny and energetic, then fed her sleeping pills to knock her out at night. This horrific cycle started when she was still a child and continued for the rest of her short life. By age 16, Judy had already skipped down the yellow brick road in The Wizard of Oz, but behind the scenes, she was living in absolute hell. MGM executives cruelly nicknamed her the Ugly Duckling and constantly criticized her weight and appearance. The studio controlled every aspect of her existence, from what she ate to who she could date. Her rigorous schedule would be considered child abuse by today's standards, yet she churned out over a dozen films before turning 20. The prescription drug addiction that started in childhood haunted Judy throughout her adult years. She suffered multiple nervous breakdowns, married 5 times, and attempted self-harm repeatedly. Despite her legendary comeback in A Star is Born, earning her an Oscar nomination, Judy remained financially broke due to exploitation by studios, agents, and husbands. In 1969, at just 47 years old, Judy was found dead in a London bathroom from an accidental overdose. The little girl who sang Over the Rainbow never found her way home. Bobby Driscoll. Disney's first contracted child star went from beloved Peter Pan to homeless drug addict in one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking falls from grace. Bobby Driscoll was the golden boy of Walt Disney Studios, with his innocent face and natural charm making him a household name through classics like Song of the South and Treasure Island. His most iconic role was voicing and providing the live-action model for Peter Pan, the boy who never wanted to grow up. The irony would prove devastatingly prophetic. When Bobby hit adolescence, his voice changed and his boyish looks matured. Disney dropped him without ceremony, offering no support or transition plan. The cute, wide-eyed boy they had banked millions on was simply discarded like yesterday's newspaper. Bobby struggled to fit into public school, where other kids bullied him mercilessly for being a washed-up former star. The fame that once protected him became a target on his back. By his late teens, Bobby had turned to heroin as a coping mechanism, beginning a downward spiral into addiction and petty crime. He was arrested multiple times for possession, forgery, and burglary. Despite briefly trying to rebuild his life through art at the Chouinard Art Institute, where he worked alongside Andy Warhol's circle, the scars of early fame never healed. In 1968, at just 31 years old, Bobby died alone in an abandoned tenement building in New York's East Village. His body was found on a cot surrounded by empty beer bottles. With no identification, he was buried in a pauper's grave. It took a year for fingerprints to confirm the identity of Disney's former crown jewel. Jackie Coogan. America's first child superstar made millions for his family, only to discover they had stolen nearly every penny. Jackie Coogan rocketed to fame at age 7, starring alongside Charlie Chaplin in The Kid, becoming one of the most recognizable faces in the world. His comedic timing and expressive eyes made him beloved by audiences, and he quickly became one of the highest-paid performers of the silent era, earning over $4 million during his childhood career. Jackie toured the world, met heads of state, and lived like royalty. He trusted that his earnings were being saved for his future, with his mother and stepfather managing his finances. But when he reached adulthood and asked for his money, he was met with cold betrayal. His mother flatly refused, telling him cruelly, "No promises were ever made to give you anything. Jackie's father wanted you to have all that money, but I'm not Jackie's father." They had spent nearly everything on lavish homes, expensive cars, and luxury vacations, while Jackie was the breadwinner. The public outrage over Jackie's financial exploitation led to the landmark Coogan Law in 1939, requiring that a portion of child actors' earnings be set aside in protected trust accounts. Though Jackie's legal victory helped future generations, it couldn't undo his personal devastation. His acting career floundered in his 20s, and he filed for bankruptcy during the Great Depression. He served bravely as a glider pilot in World War II, but lost close friends in combat. Later in life, he found success playing Uncle Fester in The Addams Family, but he never regained the fortune he'd lost. Jackie's story became a cautionary tale about the exploitation of child performers and the price of trusting the wrong people with your future. Scotty Beckett. The cherubic face of our gang hid a troubled soul destined for a violent end. Scotty Beckett was one of Hollywood's most promising young stars, charming audiences as a mischievous member of the Little Rascals series throughout the 1930s. His bright eyes, impeccable comedic timing, and natural charisma seemed to guarantee a long and successful career. He even starred opposite major names like Judy Garland and Elizabeth Taylor, positioning him as a teen heartthrob in the making. But as Scotty aged, Hollywood's interest faded faster than his boyish charm. Roles became scarce and less prominent, leaving him struggling to transition into adult parts. The fame that once surrounded him became a haunting echo of better days. Off-screen, his life was unraveling at an alarming pace. Scotty developed serious addictions to alcohol and drugs, including barbiturates and painkillers that numbed his pain but destroyed his judgment. His personal relationships turned turbulent and violent. He married 3 times, with his second wife, actress Beverly Baker, filing for divorce just weeks after their wedding, citing physical abuse. Multiple arrests for drug possession, drunk driving, and check fraud made him a tabloid regular for all the wrong reasons. By the 1960s, Scotty had vanished from Hollywood entirely, trying to work in sales and real estate, but never escaping his demons. In May 1968, at just 38 years old, Scotty was found dead in a Hollywood nursing home under mysterious circumstances. Some reports cited a drug overdose, while others pointed to head injuries from a recent assault. The exact cause was never officially confirmed, but one thing was certain: the former Little Rascal died alone, penniless and forgotten by the industry that once celebrated him. Darla Hood. The sweet voice of our gang was silenced by a medical tragedy that shocked her devoted fans. Darla Hood was the heart and soul of the Little Rascals during the series' golden age, captivating audiences with her distinctive curls, charming personality, and remarkable singing ability. As the main female lead throughout the 1930s and early 1940s, she appeared in over 50 short films, creating some of the franchise's most memorable and endearing moments alongside Spanky, Alfalfa, and Buckwheat. Unlike some of her co-stars, Darla didn't face immediate financial exploitation or family betrayal. However, the pressure of stardom at such a young age left emotional scars that followed her into adulthood. When our gang ended, she was forced to confront the terrifying uncertainty of life beyond child stardom. Hollywood had little room for former child stars once they outgrew their cute personas, leaving Darla struggling to redefine herself in an industry that only remembered her as a little girl. Darla attempted to reinvent herself as a singer and actress, performing in nightclubs and appearing in small television roles. She formed a vocal group in the 1950s and participated in reunion events where fans showered her with admiration for the joy she brought during their childhoods. Despite maintaining a positive spirit and finding some measure of peace, Darla's second act was tragically cut short. In 1979, while undergoing routine surgery to remove her appendix, she contracted acute hepatitis from a contaminated blood transfusion. The illness worsened rapidly, and she died unexpectedly at age 47. Her sudden death shocked fans who remembered her as the forever young sweetheart of the screen, proving that sometimes tragedy strikes even the most beloved figures when they least expect it. Freddie Bartholomew. British sophistication couldn't protect this young actor from family greed and Hollywood's fickle nature. Freddie Bartholomew captured international attention during the 1930s with his refined manners, crisp accent, and remarkable emotional depth. Born in London in 1924, he rose to stardom through acclaimed performances in films like David Copperfield, Little Lord Fauntleroy, and Captain Courageous, sharing the screen with legends like Spencer Tracy and Ronald Colman. Critics hailed him as one of the finest child actors of his generation. But as Freddie's fame and earnings grew, family tensions erupted into a bitter custody battle that would destroy his career. He had been living with his aunt who raised him from infancy, but after his Hollywood success, his birth parents suddenly appeared, each seeking control over his career and, more importantly, his substantial income. The legal fight dragged on for years, becoming a media circus that frustrated MGM executives who grew tired of the negative publicity and constant disruptions. The prolonged lawsuit drained the family's finances and severely damaged Freddie's reputation in Hollywood. Studios hesitated to cast him amid the controversy, and by the time the legal battles ended, he was already a teenager struggling to find work. His career effectively ended before he reached adulthood. Freddie enlisted in the U.S. Air Force during World War II, further distancing himself from the entertainment industry. When he returned from service, he found that Hollywood had completely moved on. Unlike some former child stars who fell into addiction or crime, Freddie managed to build a respectable second career in television production and advertising. He married, had children, and chose a quieter life away from the spotlight. When he died in 1992 at age 67, his final years were peaceful but far removed from the acclaim of his youth, representing lost potential due to family greed and industry indifference. Dickie Moore. The boy who gave Shirley Temple her first on-screen kiss carried emotional scars that lasted a lifetime. John Richard Dickie Moore began acting at the astonishing age of 11 months, appearing in silent films before he could even talk. By the early 1930s, he had become one of the busiest child actors in Hollywood, appearing in over 100 films by his teens and working with legends like Marlene Dietrich, Spencer Tracy, and Barbara Stanwyck. His gentle presence and expressive eyes made him a favorite among directors and audiences alike. Behind the scenes, Dickie was grappling with severe emotional issues that went unnoticed during his years in the spotlight. His childhood had been completely consumed by the studio system's relentless demands. Long working hours, enormous expectations, and little time for real education or normal childhood experiences left him without any sense of identity outside the roles he played. When the camera stopped rolling, he felt utterly lost and disconnected from reality. As he transitioned into adolescence, the roles dried up and audiences moved on to newer faces. Dickie found himself struggling to fit into the adult world of Hollywood while battling depression, substance abuse, and failed relationships. In his brutally honest 1984 memoir, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, But Don't Have Relations or Take the Car, he became one of the first former child actors to openly address the psychological damage caused by early fame. His courage in sharing his pain helped spark wider conversations about child labor laws and the need for psychological support for young performers. Despite his struggles, Dickie eventually found peace by leaving acting in the 1950s and building a successful career in public relations. He married fellow former child star Jane Powell, and they enjoyed a loving partnership until his death in 2015 at age 89, proving that with effort and support, it's possible to overcome childhood trauma. Carl Alfalfa Switzer. The off-key singing cowlick kid from our gang met a violent end that shocked America. Carl Alfalfa Switzer became an unforgettable face of childhood through his role in the Little Rascals series, where his distinctive hairstyle, cracked voice, and lovable awkwardness made millions laugh throughout the mid-1930s. His chemistry with cast members like Darla Hood and George Spanky McFarlane created some of early television's most iconic moments, cementing his place in entertainment history. But behind the wholesome facade, things weren't as cheerful as the gang's on-screen antics suggested. Switzer reportedly clashed with other child actors and pulled pranks that sometimes crossed the line. As he aged and his appeal as a child star faded, Hollywood quickly moved on to fresher faces. When Our Gang ended, Switzer was just a teenager already struggling to find his place in a world that no longer wanted him. He took bit parts in films like It's a Wonderful Life, but was mostly relegated to minor, often uncredited roles that barely paid the bills. Financial problems plagued him throughout his adult years, forcing him to bounce between odd jobs as a bartender, hunting guide, and dog trainer. None brought lasting success or satisfaction. In 1958, he was arrested for illegally cutting down trees in a national forest, and around the same time, he was shot during a money dispute, narrowly escaping death. But his luck ran out in January 1959 when Switzer was killed at age 31 in a violent altercation over a $50 debt related to a failed hunting dog deal. During a confrontation at a man's home, the dispute escalated into a physical fight where Switzer allegedly pulled a knife, prompting the homeowner to shoot him in what was ruled self-defense. The beloved alfalfa died on the spot, ending a life that had brought joy to millions, but found only tragedy for himself. Diana Barrymore. Born into Hollywood royalty, this talented actress couldn't escape the family curse of addiction and despair. Diana Barrymore entered the world in March 1921 as the daughter of legendary actor John Barrymore, one of the most revered performers of the Golden Age. With her beauty, talent, and famous bloodline, Diana seemed destined for greatness. She made her mark on Broadway before transitioning to films in the early 1940s, receiving acclaim for her performances and showing genuine potential to continue the family legacy. But the weight of expectations and her complex relationship with her alcoholic father proved overwhelming. Diana's substance abuse issues began during her teenage years and only worsened as she entered adulthood. She struggled with both alcoholism and prescription drug addiction, often spiraling into uncontrollable binges that destroyed her professional opportunities and personal relationships. Her acting career, which had shown such promise, faltered as her erratic behavior off-screen overshadowed her talent. The pressure of being John Barrymore's daughter created an impossible standard to meet, especially given his own well-documented struggles with alcohol. When her father died in 1942, Diana was left with a lingering sense of abandonment and unresolved emotional turmoil. She had a string of failed relationships, including a brief marriage to screenwriter Robert Wilcox that ended in divorce. By the late 1940s, Diana had largely disappeared from public view, fighting private battles with addiction and depression that few understood. In March 1960, Diana's struggles came to a tragic end when she passed away at age 38 from an overdose of sleeping pills in her New York City apartment. Her death was ruled accidental, but it highlighted the deep psychological wounds that had plagued her throughout her life. Despite her brief career, Diana left behind a sad legacy as someone who could never escape the shadow of family fame or the demons that haunted the Barrymore name. Margaret O'Brien. The wide-eyed innocent of Meet Me in St. Louis faced the cruel reality of Hollywood's disposable view of child stars. Margaret O'Brien's rise to fame in the 1940s was swift and remarkable, with her natural acting talent and ability to convey deep emotion, making her one of the brightest stars of her generation. Born in January 1937, she was introduced to acting at age 4 and quickly landed her breakthrough role in Journey for Margaret, which established her as a rising talent in Hollywood's constellation of child performers. Her most famous role came in the beloved musical Meet Me in St. Louis, where she played Tootie Smith, the mischievous but lovable youngest daughter. Her performance was nothing short of extraordinary, earning her an Academy Juvenile Award and making her one of the most popular child stars of the 1940s. Critics praised her natural charm and remarkable ability to handle complex emotional scenes with a maturity beyond her years, suggesting a bright future ahead. However, like many child actors, Margaret struggled with the transition from adorable kid to adult performer. As she entered her teenage years, the roles became scarcer and less significant. Hollywood's fickleness became apparent as the industry moved on to newer, younger talent. Though she appeared in films like Little Women and made guest appearances on shows like The Twilight Zone, she never regained the prominence she enjoyed in her youth. The challenge of growing up in the public eye, combined with the pressure to break free from typecasting, proved difficult to overcome. While Margaret didn't face the tragic end that befell many of her peers, her career illustrates the harsh reality that even the most talented child stars often struggle to maintain relevance as adults. Today, she's remembered fondly by classic film fans, but her story serves as a reminder of how quickly Hollywood can forget its former darlings once they outgrow their initial appeal. Carl Switzer's brother Harold. Even being related to a little rascal couldn't guarantee a happy ending in Hollywood's cruel machine. Harold Switzer was discovered alongside his more famous brother Carl when they performed an impromptu musical number at Hal Roach Studios during a family vacation to California. Both boys were signed to our gang, But while Carl became the breakout star as Alfalfa, Harold remained in the background as a supporting player throughout the series' run in the 1930s. Harold's experience in Our Gang was marked by being constantly overshadowed by his younger brother's popularity and screen time. While Carl's distinctive cowlick and off-key singing made him a fan favorite, Harold often played smaller roles that didn't showcase his personality or talents. This dynamic created a challenging family situation where one sibling received most of the attention and opportunities, while the other remained largely forgotten by audiences and industry professionals alike. After Our Gang ended, Harold faced the same struggles as many former child stars trying to transition into adult careers. However, his situation was complicated by being forever linked to his brother's more successful persona while having fewer memorable moments of his own to leverage for future opportunities. The entertainment industry showed little interest in former supporting players from children's series, leaving Harold to search for work outside Hollywood. Unlike his brother's tragic end, Harold managed to avoid the violence and addiction that claimed Carl's life, but he never achieved any significant success in entertainment or other fields. He lived a quiet life away from the spotlight, occasionally participating in Our Gang reunions, where fans were sometimes disappointed to meet the other Switzer brother. Harold's story represents the forgotten figures of child stardom, those who worked alongside the stars but were never quite bright enough to maintain their own lasting fame or financial security in an industry that had little patience for anyone not considered a marquee name. George Spanky McFarland, the leader of Our Gang, couldn't lead himself away from Hollywood's crushing disappointment. George Spanky McFarland was the undisputed star and leader of the Little Rascals during the series' most popular years in the 1930s. With his round face, distinctive bowl haircut, and natural leadership qualities, Spanky became the heart of the gang and one of the most recognizable child stars of his era. His comedic timing and ability to deliver lines with perfect innocence made him a favorite among audiences and critics alike. Spanky's popularity during his Our Gang years was extraordinary, with fan mail pouring in from around the world and his image appearing on countless merchandise items. He seemed destined for a successful transition into adult entertainment, having demonstrated acting skills beyond typical child performers. However, as he aged and the series evolved, his appeal began to diminish. And by the early 1940s, his time with Our Gang had ended, leaving him to face an uncertain future in Hollywood. The transition to adult roles proved nearly impossible for Spanky, as audiences couldn't accept him as anything other than the chubby, innocent leader of the gang. He struggled to find significant work in films or television, taking various odd jobs to support himself while occasionally appearing at fan conventions and reunion events. The entertainment industry showed little interest in former child stars who couldn't successfully reinvent themselves, leaving Spanky feeling forgotten and discarded by the business that once celebrated him. Unlike some of his co-stars who faced addiction or violence, Spanky's tragedy was more subtle but equally heartbreaking. A slow fade into obscurity while watching new generations of performers achieve the success that had once been his. He spent his later years working in various non-entertainment jobs, occasionally giving interviews about his Our Gang experiences, but never recapturing the magic that made him famous. His story illustrates how even the most successful child stars can find themselves struggling to maintain relevance once their youthful appeal expires. Mary Kornman. The original sweetheart of Our Gang discovered that being first doesn't guarantee lasting success. Mary Kornman was one of the earliest female stars of the Our Gang series, appearing in the comedy shorts during the early 1920s when the franchise was just beginning to establish its popularity. With her sweet demeanor and natural screen presence, Mary helped define what audiences expected from the series' female characters, setting a template that would influence the show for decades to come. During her time with Our Gang, Mary was considered one of the most promising young performers in Hollywood, with industry professionals predicting a bright future for her in entertainment. Her popularity among young audiences was significant, and she received considerable attention from the media as one of the series' standout personalities. However, as the Our Gang format evolved and new children were brought in to replace aging cast members, Mary found herself gradually phased out of the series, leaving her to compete in an increasingly crowded field of child performers. The challenge of transitioning from Our Gang to other opportunities proved overwhelming for Mary, as casting directors and producers struggled to see her beyond her association with the series. Unlike later child stars who had more diverse career options, Mary was working during an era when the entertainment industry provided fewer opportunities for young performers to grow and develop. She attempted to continue acting in other films and projects, but found little success in establishing herself as a significant talent outside the Our Gang framework. Her career essentially ended while she was still a teenager, leaving her to pursue other interests and eventually fade from public memory. Mary's story represents the experiences of many early child performers who helped establish successful franchises, but were ultimately discarded when the industry moved in new directions. Her contribution to entertainment history is often overlooked, but she played a crucial role in creating the foundation for one of America's most beloved children's series, even though she couldn't benefit from its long-term success. Joe Cobb, the chubby comic relief of Our Gang, learned that Hollywood has no room for yesterday's laughs. Joe Cobb was one of the original members of Our Gang, appearing in the series from its earliest days in the 1920s. With his rotund figure and innocent expressions, Joe became the lovable fat kid who provided physical comedy and visual gags that delighted audiences during the silent film era and early sound pictures. His presence helped establish the diversity of personalities that made Our Gang successful with different audiences. Joe's popularity during his Our Gang years was substantial, with his character representing the everyman quality that made the series relatable to children and families across America. His comedic timing and willingness to participate in physical humor made him a valuable member of the cast, contributing to some of the series' most memorable moments. However, as Joe aged and grew out of his childhood appeal, the series began moving in different directions, eventually replacing him with newer, younger performers who fit the evolving vision of the show. The end of Joe's Our Gang career marked the beginning of a long struggle to find his place in an entertainment industry that had little use for former child stars. Unlike performers who could transition into adult roles, Joe's association with comedy relief and his physical appearance made it extremely difficult for him to be taken seriously for other types of characters. He attempted to continue working in films and other entertainment venues, but found few opportunities available to him. The industry's focus on youth and novelty meant that former child stars were often considered outdated once their initial appeal faded. Joe spent his later years working in various non-entertainment jobs, occasionally making appearances at fan events where older audiences remembered his contributions to their childhood entertainment. His story reflects the harsh reality that success in child stardom rarely translates into lasting career opportunities, leaving many former performers to struggle with the transition to ordinary life after experiencing the highs of fame and recognition during their youth. Mickey Daniels, the freckle-faced troublemaker of Our Gang, discovered that real life offered no script to follow. Mickey Daniels was one of the earliest stars of the Our Gang series, appearing in numerous shorts during the 1920s when the franchise was establishing its place in American entertainment. With his distinctive freckled face and mischievous personality, Mickey embodied the spirit of boyhood adventure that made the series appealing to audiences of all ages. His natural comedic instincts and ability to convey both innocence and mischief made him a standout performer among the original cast members. During his time with Our Gang, Mickey was considered one of the most talented young actors in Hollywood, with his performances earning praise from critics and industry professionals who saw great potential for his future development. His popularity extended beyond the series itself, with fan magazines featuring articles about his life and career, treating him as a genuine celebrity despite his young age. However, as Mickey grew older and began to lose his youthful appearance, the series started phasing him out in favor of newer, younger children who could better represent the innocent energy that audiences expected. The transition away from Our Gang proved devastating for Mickey, as he struggled to find other opportunities in an entertainment industry that showed little interest in former child stars. Unlike some performers who could reinvent themselves or transition into behind-the-scenes work, Mickey found himself completely shut out of the business that had once celebrated his talents. His attempts to continue acting were largely unsuccessful, with casting directors unable to see him as anything other than the freckled kid from the comedy shorts. Mickey's later years were marked by financial struggles and personal difficulties as he tried to build a life outside the entertainment industry. His story illustrates the particularly cruel nature of child stardom during the early days of Hollywood, when there were fewer protections and support systems for young performers who were discarded when they were no longer considered useful. The boy who once brought laughter to millions found little joy in his own life after the cameras stopped rolling. Jackie Cooper, the boy who made America cry in The Champ, couldn't wipe away his own tears of rejection. Jackie Cooper achieved remarkable success as a child actor during the early 1930s, becoming one of the most acclaimed young performers of his generation through powerful dramatic roles that showcased emotional depth rarely seen in child actors. His breakthrough performance in The Champ earned him an Academy Award nomination at just 9 years old, making him the youngest person ever nominated for Best Actor at the time, a record that stood for decades. Jackie's talent extended beyond typical child star appeal, with his ability to convey genuine emotion and complex feelings, earning respect from adult actors and directors who worked with him. His performances in films like Skippy and The Bowery demonstrated a natural acting ability that suggested a promising future in serious dramatic roles. Industry professionals praised his professionalism and dedication, with many predicting that he would successfully transition into adult stardom, unlike many of his contemporaries who struggled with the change. However, as Jackie entered his teenage years, the roles that had made him famous became less available, and the industry began viewing him differently. The dramatic intensity that had made his childhood performances so compelling became less marketable as he aged, with studios preferring to cast fresh faces rather than invest in developing former child stars. Jackie attempted to continue his career through different types of roles and eventually found some success in television, but he never regained the prominence he had enjoyed as a child. His later years included work as a television director and producer, showing that he had learned valuable skills during his time in front of the cameras. While Jackie avoided the tragic endings that befell many child stars, his career trajectory illustrates how even the most talented young performers can struggle to maintain relevance in an industry that constantly seeks new attractions. His story serves as a reminder that critical acclaim and early success don't guarantee lasting career opportunities in the competitive world of entertainment. Jane Withers, the tomboy who challenged Shirley Temple's throne, learned that second place in Hollywood means first in line for heartbreak. Jane Withers burst onto the scene in the mid-1930s as the anti-Shirley Temple, with her dark hair, mischievous personality, and willingness to play troublemaker roles that contrasted sharply with Temple's sweet innocence. Studios positioned her as the perfect foil to Temple's popularity, and audiences embraced her spirited performances that offered a different vision of childhood on screen. Jane's success during her peak years was substantial, with her films earning significant box office returns and her fan base growing to rival that of other major child stars. Her performances in movies like Ginger and Bright Eyes showcased a natural comedic timing and fearless approach to physical comedy that distinguished her from her contemporaries. Industry professionals recognized her talent and versatility, with many considering her one of the most promising young performers of her generation. However, like virtually every child star of her era, Jane faced the inevitable challenge of aging out of her marketable persona. As she entered her teenage years, the tomboy character that had made her famous became less appealing to audiences, and studios struggled to find appropriate roles for her evolving image. The transition to adult parts proved difficult, with casting directors unable to envision her in serious dramatic roles or romantic leads that differed from her established screen personality. Jane's career gradually declined throughout the 1940s, with fewer quality roles available and less industry support for her continued development. Unlike some former child stars who found success in other areas of entertainment, Jane struggled to reinvent herself professionally while dealing with the personal challenges of growing up in the public eye. Her later years included occasional television appearances and voice work, but she never recaptured the success and recognition she had enjoyed as a child. Jane's story demonstrates how even talented performers with strong fan bases can find themselves abandoned by an industry that prioritizes novelty over loyalty. The girl who once challenged Hollywood's biggest star for audience attention eventually learned that fame's spotlight rarely shines twice on the same person, leaving former child stars to navigate adulthood without the support system that had surrounded them during their peak years of popularity and success. Shirley Temple. Even America's Golden Girl couldn't escape the darker side of child stardom forever. Shirley Temple became the ultimate symbol of childhood innocence during the Great Depression, with her signature ringlets, dimples, and golden voice providing joy and escapism for millions. Born in April 1928, she was discovered at age 3 and quickly became the highest-paid child star in history, earning an estimated $50,000 per film when most Americans made less than $1,000 annually. Her films provided rare hope during America's darkest economic period. By age 6, Shirley had become a global phenomenon whose image was so powerful that she was used to promote optimism during widespread hardship. However, the pressures of constant work, media scrutiny, and carrying the emotional weight of a nation's hopes took a severe toll on her childhood. As she grew older, the transition to adult roles proved nearly impossible, with audiences unable to accept her beyond her little girl persona. By the early 1940s, Hollywood was ready to move on to fresher faces. Shirley faced significant personal challenges beyond her fading career. Her first marriage to actor John Agar ended in divorce after producing one child, and the constant media attention made maintaining relationships extremely difficult. The pressure to reinvent herself while living under intense public scrutiny created ongoing stress that affected her well-being. However, unlike many of her contemporaries, Shirley managed to create a successful second act by shifting into politics and diplomacy in the 1960s. She became a trailblazer in public service, serving as U.S. ambassador to Ghana and later Czechoslovakia, proving her intelligence and capability extended far beyond entertainment. When she passed away in February 2014 at age 85, she had lived a full life of accomplishment, but her early years remained a testament to childhood lost to fame's demands. Judy Nugent. The adventures of Ozzie and Harriet couldn't save this young performer from Hollywood's ruthless cycle of replacement. Judy Nugent was a bright star in television's golden age, particularly known for her appearance on the popular family sitcom that defined American television in the 1950s. Born in May 1940, her natural charm and talent quickly made her a familiar face to television audiences across the country, representing the wholesome values that the show embodied during America's post-war optimism. Despite being part of one of television's most beloved family programs, Judy often found herself overshadowed by the larger personalities around her. While her performances showed genuine potential for a lasting career, the entertainment industry's constant search for newer, younger talent made it difficult for her to maintain the same level of success as she aged out of childhood roles. The transition from cute kid parts to more mature characters proved challenging in an industry that preferred to replace rather than develop its young performers. Judy's struggle to maintain relevance became apparent as she entered her teenage years. She made appearances in several other television programs and films during the 1950s and early 1960s, but found it increasingly difficult to land significant roles. The typecasting that often accompanied child star status made it hard for her to be taken seriously for different types of characters. By the 1970s, Judy had largely disappeared from public view, unable to successfully navigate the treacherous waters of Hollywood's age-obsessed culture. Unlike some of her contemporaries who remained in entertainment through perseverance or reinvention, Judy's career became another casualty of an industry that consumed its young performers and discarded them when they were no longer considered marketable. Her story represents the countless child performers who briefly shone in Hollywood's spotlight before being forgotten by an entertainment machine that valued youth above loyalty or artistic development. Patty Duke, the youngest Oscar winner ever, couldn't escape the mental health demons that plagued her entire life. Born Anna Marie Duke in December 1946, Patty achieved extraordinary success at an incredibly young age, making her Broadway debut at 12 in The Miracle Worker. Her portrayal of Helen Keller required immense emotional depth and physical challenges that showcased her remarkable talent, earning her an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress in 1963 at just 16 years old, making her the youngest Oscar winner in history. Following her film success, Patty transitioned to television with The Patty Duke Show, where she played identical cousins in a role that demonstrated her versatility and comedic timing. The show was a massive hit that made her one of the most beloved young stars of the 1960s, with her popularity reaching unprecedented heights. However, behind the scenes, the pressures of fame and the demands of growing up in the spotlight were taking a severe toll on her mental health. By age 18, Patty's psychological well-being began to deteriorate rapidly. She experienced severe emotional distress that was later diagnosed as bipolar disorder, though at the time her struggles were hidden from the public. The harsh demands from overbearing managers, combined with constant media scrutiny, created an environment where her mental health issues flourished unchecked. Her personal life became filled with turbulent relationships and highly publicized marriages that often ended in divorce, adding to her emotional turmoil. Despite continuing to work in films and television throughout the 1970s and 1980s, earning Emmy Awards and critical praise, Patty's battle with mental illness remained a constant struggle. She became a pioneering advocate for mental health awareness, openly discussing her bipolar disorder to help destigmatize mental illness. When she passed away in March 2016 at age 69 after a brief illness, her legacy included not only her artistic achievements, but also her courage in addressing mental health issues that affected countless others in the entertainment industry. Which of these stories shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let us know if you think child stars today are better protected or if history is simply repeating itself with different faces. Here's the real question that will haunt you. Knowing what we know now about the cost of child fame, should we even be watching shows and movies with child performers at all?